Welcome into the Victors Weekly here on Maize and Blue Review Podcast Network, your weekly preview show, look back, data, breakdown, blah, 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 conversation with me, Trevor and Nick, senior editor, my good friend, Mr. Nick Coston, a.k.a. Big Boutros. This game is in his neck of the woods this week. Mr. L.A., Michigan is traveling to Southern Cal, a game at the Coliseum, which, I mean, we can talk about this a little bit, but we believe will be well attended by Michigan alumni like Mr. Nick, who happened to live in LA, one of 50,000 folks out there. So first off, before we get into our football breakdown, just you as a Michigan man being able to see Michigan at the Coliseum, how excited are you for Saturday?
Incredibly. I've had butterflies basically since the Wisconsin game ended. We have cousins staying with us for the weekend. My wife and son and I have postponed international travel. My wife is Australian. We're going down to Melbourne. We pushed it back by 2 days to attend this game. This is Michigan's first game in the Coliseum since 1957. Michigan's first game in LA since the incredible Rose Bowl, the January 1st, 2024 semifinal against Alabama. This is, you can't say it's once in a lifetime because Michigan happens to come out here in different sports every once in a while. I was lucky enough to attend the Michigan basketball game at Pauley Pavilion last season. And so for all the West Coast Wolverines, this is just manna from heaven. It's a really wonderful opportunity. I know that a lot of fans are going to be there at the Coliseum. It is, I believe, USC's first home sellout of the season, and their only one to date. They have not sold out games prior or post Michigan. So it's obviously going to be well attended by both parties, but Michigan is going to show out, and I'm going to be there.
I know, I was a little surprised. I mean, I guess you can make bulletin board material out of the way Sharon Moore said it, or tone or whatever, about the fact that the game was sold out. He says, well, that's because Michigan's coming. It's true.
Yeah, I took it as just a factual statement. And to Lincoln Riley's credit, he had no reaction to it. He was just like, okay, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know. Like, I was on a USC podcast last night, and there were fans that were like, yeah, that's what Michigan State said too. It's like, guys, this isn't the same animal. Like, aside from how well Michigan travels, and to your point, like, as soon as USC gets added to the Big Ten, we're like, okay, bucket list, I'm going to the Coliseum.
Exactly.
I have to do that, right? Not to mention the transplants of just Michigan people. And like I said, folks like you, the alumni, like, they're building a business school in Los Angeles. Michigan is well represented in the area.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a fairly normal exchange. I didn't take too much out of it. I think that
it's been
an interesting week. It's been an interesting week to sort of peruse the USC message boards. There are a couple of strong, unexpectedly strong feelings. There, in particular, during last year's game in Ann Arbor, I guess there was a block by a Michigan special teamer that the USC fan base has regarded as a dirty blindside block. And I don't think there's any Michigan people that can even remember that play, let alone have sort of circled it as a high octane moment. So yeah, the USC fans are ready for this game. They are pumped, and you can't blame them. This is an extraordinarily large matchup between not only two blue bloods, but really two teams this season that are looking for, I guess, a game that will get them ahead of schedule, not just on schedule, right? The winner of this game is going to feel terrific.
I thought something was kind of interesting because, I love, or at least most of what we do on our show is take narratives at the face and then try and get below and see what reality exists there, right? And I'm always interested in what the other fan base's narrative is. And talking with some USC folks, it was just kind of funny how they're like, man, you guys are coming out on the road, and this is a game where, like, USC's fired up. They have to win it. And the coach, like, this is such a pivotal moment for this coach, not just this season, but long term. And I'm like, Oklahoma? Michigan travels to Oklahoma, and people are saying Venables is probably immediately on the hot seat if they don't win the game. Otherwise, it propels them moving forward. Nebraska is the rule, year 3 rule, actually in effect. This is the game that gets Nebraska over the hump, right? And I was like, wow, this is the 3rd game of Michigan's season where we're kind of having the same conversations. And I wonder how beneficial that is for the team as a whole, Sharon Moore as a coach, and especially your freshman quarterback, who obviously in past years, Michigan has played some pretty easy schedules to start. Do you think you're going on the road and it's a big game and all this noise around it. It's not really anything new. It's half their games this season.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this travel that is required of an Eastern time zone team like Michigan has been really cruel to the visitors. And any sort of edge or any way you can find to sort of shave off that disadvantage is going to pay dividends. And so in Michigan's case, last year, Michigan traveled on a Friday to Seattle for the Saturday game against Washington. You got to remember, last year, Michigan went 8-5. 4 of Michigan's 5 losses were to teams that finished the season ranked, not just ranked at the time of the game, but really good teams: Texas, Oregon, Illinois, Indiana. And then the 5th was Washington. Washington was the only team that was sort of mediocre or worse that handed Michigan a loss that year. And it was one of those multi-time zone travel games. So Michigan is there's more clay to mold here in terms of a learning experience, right? They've been through this last year and came out of it on the wrong end of things. And to your point, this season, this is already Michigan's 3rd road game, and all 3, the 2 preceding, have been major tests, right? I mean, this is not a road game to UConn in 2014 or whatever we did.
Oh, wow. Sorry, you said that. I just had a really time traveled to that game. Desmond Morgan, who graduated.
Yeah, there's levels to the road games. There's levels to the road environments, right? And this is a high level, but all 3 of Michigan's road games this season have been high level. So
yeah. And I do think too, like we've talked about the crowd environment. There is an interesting piece of the Coliseum because as Michigan Stadium is the biggest stadium in America because of how many people it can hold, I don't think people understand how big the Coliseum is. Like, I don't know if it's the angle of the seats or what it is particularly, but it is a huge stadium when you're inside there. So, but yeah, it just doesn't. A little bit of that is minimized because of what Michigan has already done. Now on the field, Blake brings this up, and I had to laugh too because I heard it again on the USC podcast that I was on last night. It's a common thread amongst USC fans, and it's 5 years of this now. We're gonna load the box to stop the run and make Bryce throw, and USC will win the football game. They've discovered it, Nick. The key to victory. That's all you have to do to beat Michigan.
Well, I kind of think they're right this week. I think that the path to a USC victory is shutting down the Michigan run. I think that it's not. This is not a game where there are binary outcomes. I think that, look, the spread in Vegas is USC, the home team, by 2.5. That's less than what is traditionally assigned to home field advantage. Home field advantage is worth 3 points. So everybody knows this is going to be an incredibly tight game. And it's not as simple as like, well, if you shut down, I mean, this is the point that you're making, right? It's like, just make Michigan throw. But there is sort of a binary level of comfort. If you're watching the first couple of series in this game and you want to know whether it's time to strap in or if it's going to be a long night for one team or the other, it's like, how many yards is Michigan getting on 1st and 2nd down? That absolutely matters. USC has some questionable depth and health in its back 7 and its linebacker core and in its secondary. But ultimately, for Michigan to score, it is about the Michigan running game. It's about staying on schedule. It's about doing what Michigan wants to do first and foremost. And it is, in that sense, it is a binary question, yes, no. Can USC slow that down sufficiently to where they feel comfortable on defense? Or is the Michigan offense the unit that feels comfortable in this game, right?
I think it's just, here's my gut reaction. If you say they're telling the truth this year, right? In reality, it was never more true than last year because Michigan could not throw the ball.
Sure.
And they did slow down the Michigan run attack. But then when it mattered most,
for a while, hello
Mullings, and I think people forget, like, it might have been you. Did you post it or somebody? You take the Mullings run against USC and Ohio State, those two runs, you take those away, and Michigan's 5-7 last year. Right.
That wasn't me. I would never say something so dreary.
somebody on our board posted it. But I just think, like, and again, they're not the same teams. It's not the same game, different environments, different points in the season. It's not completely transitive, right? But we've talked all year, and I think I look at the frustration of the Wisconsin game too. I'm going to try and stay on track here because I'm going to go probably a bunch of different ways. But we came into this season, and I think we kept saying, look, building block from last year, if the defense can be as good or close to as good, right, in terms of what they did in the back half of the year, and Michigan goes from 104th to maybe a top 40 offense,
right?
What an improvement that would be. And Bryce Underwood, if Bryce Underwood was on the team last year, would they make the playoff? Like, these are the conversations we're having. And so many people want to compare this team to not only 2023, but what I think is an almost mythical version of Michigan football that didn't exist, right? That Wisconsin game was a frustrating first half. It felt like Michigan should have dominated them by more. They took the lead in the third. And again, it just didn't feel like as big of a win as it should have been. We get done and we start looking at the numbers and go, wow, Michigan actually beat them pretty handedly, but it didn't translate to points. And people act like that didn't happen a lot in the Jim Harbaugh era, where 2023 alone, you have the Bowling Green game. Yeah, I'm going to go through some of these. Bowling Green, it's 7-6 late into the second quarter, 14-6 at half. They end up winning 31-6. Rutgers, they were trailing 7-0. It was tied right until before the half, win 31-7. Trailed Indiana with 11 minutes left in the second quarter, 14-7 right before half, win 52-7. 2022, you had Maryland, Indiana, Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers again. Like, this happens a lot with Michigan, where they come out, and we've seen it in the last two games, especially, where it's like the defense almost allows the offense to do what they want, the opponent on script plays, to kind of feel them out, and then plays really well. And then the last drive, they put in a bunch of freshmen in the secondary and give up some points maybe they shouldn't have. To your point, this week, I don't think Michigan can afford to do that. You can't fall behind to USC. And right. I think, to fans' frustration, and we've seen on the road in the past where, like, Michigan comes out a little bit flat, and like you said, do I need to strap in, or what kind of win is this going to be?
Mm-hmm.
I hope they're not planning on coming out and feeling out USC, because you can't go down 7-0.
Right. You're not going to survive that. Yeah. Nebraska, I mean, first of all, it didn't work. That didn't work against Oklahoma, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that happened against Oklahoma. You went down 14-0. You got the big touchdown run, first play of the third quarter, to sort of get that back to, like, striking distance realistic. But ultimately, that was what turned into a loss. That's sort of what put that fear into the fans' hearts. Nebraska, we've seen recently, has such an Achilles heel on its offensive line that they are actually a team that is built to be come back upon, right? USC is one of those superpower offenses that you can't get in a hole against. They're sort of a mirror image of Oklahoma, right? Oklahoma, we've now determined, has pretty good argument for the single best defense in the entire
best
country.
Defense in the country. Yep.
Right? USC is there on offense. And I'm glad you mentioned the Wisconsin game, just to sort of structure these thoughts here, just to go backwards a little bit. You and I connected after the Wisconsin game. I think it was like Sunday evening or something. We'd slept on it. And we basically agreed, like, you know what? It was fine. Like, this doesn't need a post-mortem. This doesn't need an autopsy. This isn't like what went wrong and we barely got out of there. More went right than went wrong against Wisconsin. I think the only question that Wisconsin keeps on the surface for this Michigan team is this question about the difference in what we're seeing between like the yards per play margin and the down-to-down success versus the final score. Michigan's yards per play margin right now are actually at like elite levels, like truly elite. Michigan's offensive yards per play right now, 2025 team, is actually beating some of the offenses from the Big Ten title runs, the 40-3 run, right? So the best offense in that stretch was 2022. Michigan's yards per play this year is better than 21 and 23, the national title team.
That's crazy.
So Michigan is 4-1, and in 3 of the 4 wins, in 3 of Michigan's 4 wins, you are seeing yards per play and EPA margins against the opponent that are suggestive of massive blowouts that a top 10 team would get against a non-conference or a low conference opponent, right? New Mexico. So Central doesn't get. Central is the one I'm eliminating because it was just the scoreboard did match. But most recently Wisconsin, you work backwards to Nebraska and the opener against New Mexico. These are games where, like you and I talked in the Wisconsin preview, we're like, oh, this is kind of a hard team to talk about. This kind of looks like Central. Well, the post-game win expectancy was 99.8%. It basically was the same as Central. It just wasn't cosmetic, right? The final score, 24-10, doesn't look like 66-3. But in most of these wins, Michigan is doing like 85, 90% of the work to get to the kind of result you'd see from a top 10 playoff team facing a lesser opponent. And it's just that final sort of 10, 15% of snaps where like one thing goes wrong. And it doesn't cost the game. It doesn't turn a win into a loss. It just sort of ruins the cosmetics of the ending. And so that's the only question, I think, from the Wisconsin game that is keeping at the surface, is that for the most part, the Wisconsin game answered more questions than it raised. More good came out of it than bad. You look at the receiving statistics for Donovan McCulley and Andrew Marsh, like, wow, right. Michigan has a wide receiver 1. Michigan has a wide receiver 2, right? Michigan ran for 175 yards on the best rush defense in the country. More good than bad. But the only thing is, like, which dam is going to break as the season moves on, as you play a team as good as USC? Which dam is going to break, and which Michigan team is going to finish the game? Is that elite yards per play margin team going to take the successful outcomes from 85, 90% to 95, 100%? And you're going to see a big time comprehensive win where the scoreboard matches that wrinkly stuff? Or are one of these mistakes going to cost them? And this opponent is good enough where 1, 2, 3 mistakes can cost you. It can turn a win into a loss. But that's the only, like Wisconsin itself as a 4-quarter game, you actually saw more from Michigan that looked like progress, that looked like improvement, as opposed to taking a step back. It's just the lingering question about that little 10% of mistakes. That's the only thing. But otherwise, if you wanted to review the Wisconsin game, you'd say you saw a lot of really fine performances, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, where that was the one place where you knew Wisconsin could stay alive, was in its front 4 and its front 7. And Michigan dictated that game offensively. So that's my short Wisconsin postscript. That's my lessons learned. More good than bad, but just the lingering question.
I think part of the reason Wisconsin was easy for me to just kind of toss away as well was it was simple. If the game was closer than I expected, which it was, I thought there was 2 very obvious things. One, I had said in my prediction that we posted that I thought Fickell would make a QB change in this game. I thought later in the game. There was no talk whatsoever that O'Neal wasn't going to start. So
right.
Quarterback
practiced the whole week. He got every first team snap in practice leading up to this game.
Exactly. So Michigan admitted they had prepped for O'Neal and maybe a surprise healthy Billy Edwards, right?
And there's nothing on Hunter Simmons anyway, in the world. This is a guy who in 4 years in FCS Southern Illinois had played in 5 games ever.
It's crazy.
He's from a small town in Southern Illinois, no star recruit. Yeah, there's not much. You don't know anything about his arm angles, about his eyes, whatever.
He's a Mellencamp or Bruce Springsteen song, right?
Yeah.
So I think that plays an element in the first drive, not really for the rest of the football game. On the offensive side of the ball, we know now that Andrew Sprague had essentially a tell or something in his technique that Wisconsin took advantage of. To your point, we said going into the game, they do have really good edge defenders, and they played well, and that was a factor, right? Your bigger point, though, the good takeaways, obviously what's happening at wide receiver, and it sounds like could potentially not only continue, but maybe even now Jamar Browder gets involved a little bit as well. But you saw not only McCulley and Marsh play and get targets, but Bryce trust them with 50-50 balls, and these guys execute and make plays, and a confidence in McCulley, right, that I think we expected earlier in the year. And sometimes that's just all that needs to happen, is this sense or feeling that, oh, my team, my coaches, my player believes in me. I made a play. Let's do it again. Right. And then that's something they can build on. That makes me feel better. Potentially a healthy Giovanni El Hadi coming back makes me feel better. I don't know if Hanson's going to play in this game. We'll see at this point until he's full health. I've talked about him every week and what he does to the offense, whatever. You feel good, though, in my opinion, about Michigan's offense against this defense. It's obviously on the other side of the ball, the Michigan defense, which is their better unit against the USC offense, which to your point is one of the best, if not the best in the country. Right? It's an interesting flip, but I can't help but think of the Ohio State games, although Ohio State obviously had a much stronger defense. Maybe Washington is a good example in the national championship as well, but Washington's offense wasn't as good as maybe they thought it was, especially from like a points per drive perspective or some of these other things in the back end. But if USC is going to come out and score, what are they? 4.5 points per drive is what they're averaging this year. If there's 8-9 possessions, right, is this and Michigan's allowing that kind of offensive production, especially early, like you said, they're not going to win, right? So a healthy Rod Moore, YouTube user, whoever that actually is, brings that in, brings back full strength.
Nice bow tie, fella. What a sartorial gentleman. Good job.
But yeah, Rod Moore being back to full strength makes the defense so much better. From a secondary matchup standpoint, and obviously the firepower that USC has, I don't know that the secondary is obviously part of the story, but knowing what I know about Wink Martindale and what Lou Esposito said out loud, they want to win this game in the trenches. It's going to be every Michigan game we've seen. They're going to try and run the ball and establish it. And on defense, they're going to try and create pressure. Can they do that early enough that Wink doesn't feel like he has to start sending a bunch of blitzes? Or, what is USC's answer, I guess? It feels like a minimization of explosives on both sides, right? Because part of Michigan's success on those back-end stats that you've been talking about is because of the success they've had with explosive plays, primarily from Justice Haynes. So Michigan almost needs to be more consistent and establish those 4 and 5 yard runs and these long drives to get longer possessions and minimize USC possessions, where USC wants to be explosive in this game.
I would caution any Michigan fan against comparing this USC offense to like the Michael Penix national title fan.
Right.
Offense. In terms of your expectations, I think that you should expect 4 scoring drives by the USC offense in this game. And anything plus minus that is going to swing win expectancy by 20%. If they're driving and you get a fumble in the red zone or you pick them off in the end zone, you can scarcely put a price tag on how critical stuff like that is going to be. If they miss a field goal, if Zavada misses a field goal, possessions for the USC offense ending in anything other than touchdowns is worth its weight in gold this weekend. You have to strap in just here on Thursday, right? I mean, who knows when the game starts and maybe their center is he can't handle anything, right? Who knows? But just as we sit here, you have to anticipate that USC is going to move the ball and move the ball quite crisply. They have in every passing metric, they have the number one offense in the country. Michigan in defensive success rate against the pass is 70th. Now, another takeaway from Wisconsin that you and I haven't mentioned yet, but it comes into this part of the conversation. The return of Rod Moore made my eyes bulge cartoonishly.
Yeah.
I was feeling a little bit gloomy about Rod's prospects of coming back at full strength and full speed. It had been years, plural, since we'd seen him.
Right.
Multiple knee scopes and reconstructions. It was a knee injury that was like 3 times worse than the initial assessment, and he had to keep getting it redone and redone. Okay, so he'll come back. He'll be like a captain and sort of a senior voice in the locker room, and he'll be on a pitch count and a snap count. Oh, by the way, week 1, he's back against Wisconsin. He's the highest graded safety in the country.
Crazy.
He didn't just look playable. He didn't just look like the old Rod Moore. He looked better. He looked faster than when we last saw him somehow. He single-handedly...
It's funny how these guys post-injury can come back faster.
I know.
It's crazy.
He single-handedly, on a pair of really well-designed Wisconsin plays, stopped the ball that it either would have been like a 30-yarder or a touchdown. He might have stopped 2 touchdowns. He got a deep safety center fielder interception. He was lethal. And so if you try to talk me into that number 70 number isn't real because Rod Moore is back, I would listen to that. I do think, oh, and by the way, I mean, there was just a tweet just before we started rolling that Jair Hill is number 1 nationally in opponent completion percentage. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it all comes down to third downs, right? A lot of the negative defensive numbers about the Michigan secondary are about third down conversions or long amounts of yardage, like 3rd and 16, and the opposing passing offense gets 14 yards, and now they have an easier decision to make on 4th down. Stuff like that, right? That's been happening. That was sort of the negative outcome story of the game versus Nebraska, right? A lot of that, or some of what goes into that number 70 number is the Hail Mary at the end of the half against Nebraska. You can say it doesn't count or it didn't cost them the win, but it goes in those numbers. So sure. It's part of my story and my takeaway about 85% of good things happening, and then you hit these speed bumps, and it hasn't flipped a win to a loss. And I include Oklahoma in that just because their defense was so dominant that, I think Michigan had a 6 or 7% post-game win expectancy. Like that Michigan was kept in that game by Oklahoma errors more than vice versa. But in the close wins, Michigan has been getting away with some of the stuff that leads to that number 70 number. And so the question is, does that get cleaned up? Does Rod Moore erase that? Do you see sort of the first 60-minute lockdown performance by the Michigan secondary, or is the USC offense going to cook the way it's been cooking?
I think the nice thing, and Rod Moore's a big piece of this, but the nice thing about this season, and maybe why I haven't been as dissatisfied as a lot of Michigan fans, is, again, I looked at kind of what the blueprint was for early in the year, and being 4-1 at USC with a freshman quarterback that maybe the only true freshman mistake he's made was that bad interception against Central, right? Like there hasn't been these plays where you're like, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
There's definitely been non-critical mistakes from him, but on the defensive side of the ball, where you had to replace elite talent and try to win with a depth situation, a committee approach, a la 2022, you've learned a lot about your team, right? Whether it's the Jason Barham move to edge and what that's done for not only his play, but also Derek Moore's.
Yep.
And a player like Dom Nichols, who was asked to step into a huge role, doesn't have to now. And TJ Guy, who was asked to go from high impact player in a secondary role to becoming Josiah Stewart, gets to now go back to that secondary role. And he's been more successful with Barham moving over, right? Defensive tackle, like, oh, we're going to rotate, up to 6 guys. Well, Big Ike has not been playing. And we've seen some separation in terms of roles with Benny, Pierce, Payne, and Williams. Like, that defensive line rotation seems clear now. At linebacker, again, with Barham being able to move over, we know what Ernest Hausman is and can be and has been. Jimmy Rolder, what is he going to be healthy? Well, we know as healthy, he's been a solid Mike linebacker. He's gone from coverage liability to coverage strength. Cole Sullivan, we've talked about in limited action, is arguably a top 3 to 5 player on this defense. You know what he is. And in the secondary now, that final piece of the equation with a healthy Zeke Berry and a healthy Rod Moore is, I know I have Jair Hill, who leads the country, to your point, in forced incompletion percentage. He makes plays on the ball. Zeke Berry as well as a guy that makes plays on the ball, but both of them, maybe there's that concern, have been susceptible to some of these double moves and such. Jaden Sanders, in the meantime, has become a very, very good corner when it comes to keeping the play in front of you and not allowing the big plays, right? Brendan Hillman has gone from just a missile to a little bit more refined, still hard hitting. TJ Metcalf is the nickel. There's not even a conversation about it anymore. And then you throw in a Rod Moore and some flex with a Mason Curtis or even a Jaden Mangum limited, whatever. But I know what that defense is, right? And I feel comfortable that Wink late in last year didn't really know. I mean, we know the conversation, right? That, he didn't know how to use these players, or that he was trying to do some NFL schemes they weren't ready for, et cetera. I think he knows how best to deploy the players he has. And I mean, it's an elite offense again. It just is. And I don't want to get into like we did with Wisconsin in terms of like the level of opponent USC has played, because I do think there is some element of that potentially, but it's not the same thing as Wisconsin. This isn't a complete mirage. Those are really, really good explosive football players, right? It's kind of the John Mateer conversation again for me. Under pressure, Jay Maeva is 45% completion rate. His, top in college football, nearly 12 yard per average, goes down to 8. He has no touchdown passes. He throws more turnover worthy plays. He doesn't go as deep with the football. He's not a big scrambler and he doesn't take a ton of sacks, but breaking news, creating pressure on a quarterback is a good thing. And he's one that sees a significant drop off. So I said it earlier and I'm going to kind of stick to it. If Michigan can create pressure without Wink having to get too creative, then I think it's a game they probably maybe surprise us with how they're able, like not easily, I don't want to say easily win, but I just think that makes the day a lot easier, if that's a better way to put it.
So I'm going to take that and I'm going to pile even more on the defensive line's plate, okay? Because not only is that true, not only is it about getting pressure with 4, it's also about stopping USC's run with 4.
Yeah.
I apologize to Rayshon Benny and Derek Moore and all these guys, but like, you have to do it all this Saturday, because if you can, then yes, you can throw like any zone, any 7-man coverage you want, and just keep everything in front of you. The USC rush offense is no slouch. The USC rush offense is incredibly efficient. They save their explosives mostly for the passing game. They have a high success rate on offense. By EPA, it's actually the number 8 rush offense nationally. And I think sort of the thing that gets really scary about this USC offense is that all these ways that they're number 1 in passing, it's not in volume, right? It's not just because they throw 60 times a game and they're bound to get yards. These guys are finishing games against Michigan State and Purdue, which of course is that's not the Michigan defense. I understand that. But Maize is only throwing 25, 26, 27 times. Yeah. They're able to run the ball as a team 40, 45 times and get the yards that they need to keep the defense completely honest in the box. That wasn't necessarily the case last year with Miller Moss and the backfield that they had this year. This year, Maize is he's not really a run threat. I mean, they give him probably 2-3 design runs on the ground. He got a really nice zone read touchdown against Michigan State. The Red Sea parted untouched into the end zone, probably about 20 yards out. Waymon Jordan, their RB1, is terrific. So I'm putting everything defensively, everything in terms of stopping USC the way that you need to stop it. I'm sorry, but I'm putting everything on the defensive line because they have to get pressure on passing downs and passing plays without the help of Cole Sullivan or whoever. And they got to stop the run themselves without too much help from Jimmy Rolder. Those are big asks. That's two extremely tall tasks. If this were last year, I mean, that's how Michigan won the game last year, right? Because Michigan beat a decent USC team without the ability to throw essentially a single pass. Michigan had a 2-minute drill in the fourth quarter to win the game that was entirely on the ground. It was an oddity. That doesn't apply in both directions this year, right? You've got Bryce Underwood, but you don't have Kenneth Grant, you don't have Mason Graham. So I'm putting all the pressure on the Michigan defensive line to basically carry 2 Herculean loads on its shoulders. If it can do both, then I think that's where your comfortable scenario comes into play, right? That's what you're talking about. Like, yeah, hey, maybe this looks good for Michigan. That's the if. To me, if the Michigan front 4 or 5, whatever it, as long as you're not overloading and blitzing and all this, the Michigan front 4 is essentially dictating what the USC offensive line can produce. That's where the nice scenarios come into play for Michigan.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know. It's so easy, and I have as well, to focus on the passing attack. But you're right. Like Waymon Jordan isn't that far off from Justice Haynes.
He's terrific. He is a true RB1. Yeah. He has, for some reason. So I watched a lot of the Michigan State USC game, and Mekhi Frazier is the Michigan State running back. And he has this sort of one-cut gimmick, right? And early in the season, he was making these back cuts. And it's like, Waymo is that guy plus 8 other guys. He has a full bag. He can really do it all as a running back. And so, I don't know, man. It's, the challenge is super steep.
Yeah, he's averaging 7 yards per attempt compared to Justice Haynes, 7.7. They're actually pretty similar in rushing attempts. It's actually funny. Like, the more you look at this, these offenses are actually really similar in the way that they operate. And you could argue Michigan's goal is to look a lot like USC does this year.
Yeah, long term, yeah.
Yeah, so, you've got Waymo and Haynes, again, very similar. You hope, Jordan has fumbled 2 or 3 times this year. Maybe that's a possibility, again, forcing, Maize into some mistakes as well. But they've also got their RB2, Eli Sanders, again, kind of similar to Marshall here. They have almost nearly identical carries, 5.6 yards per carry for Sanders, 5.2 for Marshall. And these are people, they break tackles. Waymo, 24 broken tackles, Justice Haynes, 20, Marshall, 12, Sanders, 7. I mean, you go through this, and there's just a lot of parallels in terms of breakaway runs as well. It's a daunting task. This isn't the usual like Lincoln Riley conversation,
right?
Or at least recent with USC. the interesting thing for me, though, is that usual. I want to touch on this with Lincoln just because you kind of associate offense with Lincoln. And then I think there is an interesting defense conversation I want to have before we leave. But with Lincoln, I think Blake said it already. USC already has always has some horrific turnovers. You brought up the way they can fade late sometimes like they did last year. And we've seen them do in other games under Lincoln Riley. It's not the same thing as James Franklin. Okay. But there are coaches that just have this tag tied to them when it comes to games like this, where like they almost get in their own way or their team. There's just something that surrounds them. Right. Harbaugh had a narrative for a long time about winning on the road, winning as an underdog, whatever. With the offense that they have this year and not trying to be, I mean, you could argue Jaden is in the Heisman level conversation because of how well he's performing, but it's not throwing the ball 50 times a game, right? With this balance they have, can he sit back and just kind of let things come? Or is he going to try and put the pedal on the gas or react quickly if Michigan is able to remain close or slow them down or whatever?
That's an interesting question. I actually hadn't thought about that because, yeah, it's easy enough to say, let the running backs cook and let's do a heavy run pass split against Purdue. But this is a marquee game. So it's an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about that. Do I need 20 targets for Mekhi Lemon because this is primetime kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's been in the back of my mind. And again, it's not James Franklin. It's not that level, right? And USC fans can probably speak to it better. And there's Oklahoma fans that love to bring it up as he's not been able to immediately turn USC into this next powerhouse or whatever. But as much as I said, these teams are really similar, and maybe it's what Michigan wants to be in the future. Michigan would play differently with this offense in terms of how they would get to victory, where Lincoln tends to be one of those guys that, like, I don't care what the clock says. I don't care what the score says. We're going to play the pace I want to play and the way I want to play. And I wonder if that becomes a factor, right? And I don't know. We won't know. And I've stumped you with this apparently, but I know you weren't prepared.
I feel stumped. I do feel stumped just because I think that this game, I've said this to a bunch of friends, this game looks to be absolute cha-ching $sign eyeballs for TV executives. This is going to be one of the most extraordinary games to this point in the season. It's like everybody's picking a close game. The line is close. The over-under is high. Like they think it's going to be an offensive, a clash of styles. Is Justice Haynes going to run for 200 and get his name in the Heisman race? Is Maeva going to throw for 300 and lead for the Heisman race? Like, I do feel stumped because I can see anything. I can see anything happening.
I know.
And it's exciting for neutrals, and it makes me
I wish
miserable.
I didn't care.
I've had this just pit in my stomach all week. And I don't think I'm alone.
Okay, first real, just kind of yes or no, because you said it. I'm interested in this. A big game for Justice Haynes in a victory. Is he in the Heisman conversation after that?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Is that pit in your stomach because you're going and because you're in LA and the connections you have? If you take some of that out of it, are they not able to overcome a loss? Is a loss in this game, if it is close at USC,
so
really detrimental, or is it?
No, this is a good question for two reasons. This is actually a really good question because I've been meaning to tell you about this. So 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, 2 games ago, Michigan played at Nebraska, right? So that Nebraska game in Lincoln, how did I watch that? That was my really good friend's 40th birthday party where he rented a house up in the canyons and there were 100 people over, and I brought my son and he was playing with other kids and we were all screaming our heads off. And so when that game ends and Michigan wins, what did I come on and say? Like, pass fail, beautiful performance, pass fail, they passed, right? Wisconsin, my wife and son are out of the house, and I'm sitting in the house by myself watching it, like, and so the level of like satisfaction and joy just like plummets, right? And so, to answer directly, yes, I think a lot of the butterflies are because I'm going to see it in person, and there's so many people here with me, and it's like the emotional stakes are high. We all want to have a great time together. But the second half of your question is, look, Michigan is already on schedule. This game would get the winner ahead of schedule. The loser will not fall behind schedule. Michigan already got the win at Nebraska. Michigan is already clearly way, way better than the team that played in Norman, the Oklahoma loss. So I think objectively, you'd have to say that you've seen enough growth from the Michigan team to feel pretty good, right? Unless, I don't even want to say it out loud, but like there's 4 outcomes. There's one outcome where maybe you'd feel like you took a step back.
Agreed.
But the butterflies are mostly about the nature of how we're going to be consuming this game. It's fair to say. It's fair to make that distinction. It's an opportunity, I think, for the winner. It is, and I think that's part of the reason why neutrals can be so excited about it, because it's. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be an ugly game. Yeah. I think it's going to. I think that people who are not freaking out are going to have a lot of fun, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think Indiana, Oregon for us, maybe. I mean, it's not the same because Indiana is the traditional, history power that goes with USC and Michigan. Like there's some more pageantry to this game, obviously, but I don't know. I go back to, again, if we've talked about this team and what their realistic expectation goals were, a loss means, assuming you're able to avoid trap games, you're 9-2 and you play Ohio State, and win or lose probably determines your playoff outcome. We're in that 9-3, 10-2 bubble we've talked about. A win, and you're 5-1, and now that Ohio State game is potentially a matchup between undefeated Buckeyes, 1-loss Michigan. Both teams are in the playoff regardless of outcome. Big Ten championship game maybe on the line. Like that's the level of ahead of schedule, to your point. Now, some people think that's the schedule Michigan should be on anyway, right? And maybe that's why there's different tenet to it. But I'm with you. I think if it's close and there's nothing in the game that discourages me. I mean, the special teams are what they are, unless if they somehow become worse, I can't imagine. But like, short of Bryce making really bad mistakes he hasn't made, or the defense getting torched, or the run game not being able to establish like some really like bad things, if they look good, I'll put it this way. The number I'm stuck on is 30-27, and I just can't decide who I think wins yet.
Yeah.
If it's that kind of game, I'm probably happy. Not happy, but I'm okay. I'm not ready to freak out either way, right? But real quick, because we didn't talk about it yet, and I don't think it's not a huge part of the storyline in terms of this game, but it is an interesting piece to me. USC defensively goes out and hires a couple years ago who many would say was probably the most likely candidate to be Sharon Moore's first defensive coordinator, right? And Dante Linton works for Wake Martindale in Baltimore, and that's kind of his first higher role exposure. And so much
very clearly part of that tree and system, like unmistakably so. Lynn is part of the Baltimore amoeba, Mac Minter Wink family. Right.
Does that mean anything from a game plan prep standpoint for either team? Is there any advantage, disadvantage that arrives or erases from it? Or is it just kind of a fun footnote in the game?
I don't know. I don't think so. Like, not in my gut about this particular game. Like, does Wink know something that Lynn doesn't or vice versa? I don't think so. I think the only thing that tells me is, every time Michigan makes a defensive coordinator hire out of that amoeba scheme, the results seem to be pretty good. And, is that because of the scheme, or is that because Michigan as a program is committed to fielding a necessary defense? And, that USC defense is not great. It hasn't been great under Lynn.
Right. The only comparison is the scheme.
Right.
It's not the results.
Right. Despite the qualifications. And so I think it's not so much about like little hidden stuff for this particular game. It's just part of the Lincoln Riley conversation. Like, he went out and hired the best hire, and it hasn't really fixed the defense. So I guess it's just a little bit of a glimpse and a window into, like, maybe that's how he structures his practice. Maybe that's how he, it's just sort of an operational reflection. Because Lynn, it's not, Jim Knowles, every time Jim Knowles changes jobs, he gets this excuse like, oh, well, it takes 17 years for the Jim Knowles system to be implemented. Right. And in the meantime, you give up 42 points to UCLA. Not his fault.
And
nobody ever says that about.
Forgot to call a play on McCue fourth down because it was literally his third day.
Yeah, he did, and he didn't know how to press the button on his waist.
Right.
Like you don't that conversation doesn't really come up with Lynn or the Ravens or so I think, I don't know if I don't know enough about like how those meetings are structured, where like, does Wink pop over to Chip and be like, let me tell you this and that, and you're going to get him? Maybe that would be cool. I think mostly that it's just a little glimpse into like how Lincoln Riley sort of operates his program.
Because again, it's so funny in a weird way. These teams could be remarkably similar, and they're not. You know what I mean? But in terms of the way they could do things and the roster's constructed, and like on offense, what's happening between a run-pass balance and where they're explosive, and on defense schematically, like these could be really similar teams, and they're not at all. And that's such an interesting thing to me. And that's Lincoln Riley versus Sharon Moore, I guess.
I had a screenwriting professor, Terry Curtis Fox. He was one of the co-creators of Hill Street Blues in the 70s. And one of his most important lessons was if you're writing a TV series and you need to fill 22 episodes in a season, never save your best material, right? If you're writing the pilot, put every good idea you have, put it in there right away. And right now, as I sit here, I am breaking that rule because I have so many takes, but I'm holding them back. I refuse to share some of these takes until I see what happens on Saturday, because they could be validated or invalidated by the result.
Fair.
I'll just leave it there.
I think like from the prognosticator point of view, and like when it comes to prediction, like I could never do what Josh Pate does from a prediction standpoint. Like I think his best work is reacting anyway.
Right.
And
Mine too.
The way he looks at things, I think he has a great objective perspective on a lot of different things. There's some games where like I find something in terms of numbers pattern. Like I was so confident for that Michigan-Washington national championship. All leading up to it, these Washington fans and what they're telling me, I'm saying this is exactly how the game is going to go, and it did. This isn't one of those games for me at all, and it's tough in this kind of environment. You and I like obviously talking about but like I can't come out and say this is going to play out. This is why they're going to win, And I'm with you. Some of those takes I have are reserved because I don't feel confident one way or the other.
Right.
In what
I
this
think,
game is gonna be.
without you and I, we're really tiptoeing around some stuff here.
Yeah.
The next episode might be 4 hours long. When you and I meet again next week.
Yeah.
If all goes according to someone's plan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you because realistically, when you talk about the 4 outcomes of a game, how often do you feel like all 4 are possible?
Right. Not that
I mean,
often.
Michigan blowing them out is probably the least likely, right? Like being on the road and just, but but not by like a crazy wide margin. I'm just saying if I had to try and start putting them in order.
Was Ohio State at Washington a blowout? 24-6.
Are you asking me like, do I think it's?
I'm asking you, do you think so? Did you think that game was a blowout?
No, and the way they got to that score, no.
Okay. Then, yeah, I agree with you. It's the least likely.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, agreed. All right. I know you don't want to probably do prediction, but are you? Like I said, I'm at like 30-27. I don't know who wins. Give me this. Are you?
I'm at 35-31. I'm at 35-31.
So the higher scoring end of it.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I would sort of put on the record is, look, this is a Michigan show. It's mostly Michigan people watching. Even if you feel good about this game, don't assume that USC is going to score like 14 points on Saturday.
Yeah.
That's my warning to you for your own. This offense is real. I don't care about the Missouri State stuff. Everything that is opponent invariant says this offense is lethal. And so if Michigan holds them to 21 or 24 points, that's an A+, right? If Michigan beats them in a complete shootout, that's okay. But I've seen a number of takes. I've seen a wide range of takes. I've seen Michigan fans who think Michigan is going to get blown out just because it's like, if you go, I think they're generally on the older side and they remember a lot of these West Coast trips for Bo Schembechler's Michigan teams.
Yeah.
And basically I think Michigan has not won a regular season West Coast road game since 1989. So in the Moeller and Carr era, Michigan comes out to Pasadena or Seattle or whatever and just gets waxed.
Dennis Dixon,
and that's just the way it is. So I've seen a lot of that. I would caution against that, but I would also caution against the youngsters who are like, USC, who cares? I care.
It's so funny. I haven't thought about that. They don't really know a good USC. Or at least at the level of
not yet. Just not like a Marcus Allen USC.
Yeah. Or even faint memories of Reggie Bush in the Pete Carroll years too. Right?
Rich, our mutual friend Rich, I'm blanking, but Michigan had a running back who wore white shoes and in the 70s, and he scored a touchdown against USC, but it was ruled short and it cost Michigan the game. So I think a lot of the older fans have scars like that. Hopefully he'll tell us afterwards. I'm sorry I don't know the 70s running backs with white shoes.
I'm going to be pissed I can't think of it right now, but it's not even close to the front of my mind, so I'm not going to try. But,
right.
All right, I'm with you. Gosh, it's so weird because I do have this anxiety about it because I don't know, but I'm also like not worried. And I don't know. I'm comfortable with this game, so we'll see. And yeah, I'm excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, I can't say until
you go into the game, it'll be fun.
I can't say until it's over, but I think that the healthy perspective is like, look, Michigan has already gotten a a road win under its belt. It's 2-0 in the Big Ten. It's improving from week to week. So a loss doesn't ruin the season. And a win just puts you crazy ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I'd be more worried about a loss that affects the trajectory of the team.
I strongly agree with that.
Around the team, if that makes sense, right? Like I always talk with, whether it's the high school coaches that I cover locally or whatever, you don't want to have a team beat you twice, right? And that would be more my concern, is any potential hangover from a loss versus the Oklahoma game where it felt like there was
they responded incredibly well. Yeah, I think that there is a bit of a scheduling advantage. It was funny to see, if you read the Washington message boards like Dogman or Hardcore Husky, as soon as it was announced that Washington at Michigan was going to be a 9 a.m. Pacific kickoff in Michigan Stadium, all those words were like, all right, well, see you next week. Like, that's over. So is that a trap game? Remains to be seen. But like, I agree with you. How Michigan responds from this West Coast trip will be informative.
Yeah, man, a win is going to be hard to try and reel back. Right.
Oh yeah, it'll be. Yeah, I think if Michigan wins, then the first quarter against Washington is going to be a real sloppy stink fest.
Potentially. That's funny. All right, Nick, sincerely, I hope you have an excellent time, man. I'm really happy for you. And
thank you.
Take pictures.
All right, I will. You got it.
Obviously, Maize and Blue Review, we will be out there as well with coverage from the press box. If you are watching this back on playback, make sure you're liking, subscribing, notification bell, so when we go live, when Dennis goes live with Good Afternoon Michigan Football, when the Cut Ups crew, Mr. Toski and Darnell, go live tonight with their USC film breakdown, when Jim Scarcelli and John Dewar, former Michigan players, do on Twitter, when they go live with their film breakdown during the week, and then we'll have post-game coverage as well. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, doing notification bell, and head over to On3, search for Maize and Blue Review. We have tons of intel. I've got some questions in the comments about Jamar Browder. I'm going to do that to you. Tons of Jamar Browder talk over inside the den. Maize and Blue Review. We've got a lot of intel.
Tin Man getting in some trash talk just at the whistle here, just before the final buzzer.
Go Trojans. What animal?
Dodo Michigan clowns. Michigan fans are clowns.
Are clowns. All right.
Go Tin Man.
That's awesome.
All right.
I don't know if I've seen Dodo emoji usage.
I like that. I respect that.
Well, I'm glad he has your respect. I just realized through this whole show you're wearing something kind of UCLA colored.
It is. This is my Jackie Robinson tee.
Oh, that's sick. Okay, hold that up again.
So
that's fantastic.
The conversation of this episode, like I said, I'm just holding, like, my powder is ultra dry. Okay, there is a lot, dude. Next week,
I'm excited. I'm excited to text you after this. This is gonna be interesting.
I know. You might be.
All right. Well, it sounds like
Roots of Fight, baby. Who's Brandon Mason? Roots of Fight, baby. What does that mean? Roots of Fight.
Nice sweatshirt, Nick. Go Bruins.
Thanks, Tim, man.
You guys can
now we're just hanging out. Now we're all just hanging out.
You two get into the DMs and continue this. All right, make sure you join us. Sounds like we're gonna have an exciting episode as I try to reel these takes out of Nick and whatever he's been holding back. So
let me see.
Again, hopefully we're discussing a Michigan victory, but
is it the brand? Oh yeah, good call. It is. It's the brand, Roots of Fight. Good call, buddy. I got it at the UCLA baseball stadium. They were playing Penn State. Well, this is a very long cut. This is a live show.
Anybody who watches Hail to the podcast with me and Josh knows this is every single one of our outros ever. At this point, we would normally be talking about my past work at Circuit City.
Nice.
Or Josh's Taco Bell stomach issues or a whole host of unbelievable things that don't need to be discussed. So this isn't weird for me at all.
So UCLA sweatshirt is actually not that far off topic.
Dude, no,
All right, that's good to know. That's good to know.
This is borderline relevant to most of my sign-offs.
Yeah, I mean, if you like soft vintage sweatshirts, go check out Roots of Fight. And wow, now I'm even getting a phone call. So see you guys later.
Speaking of soft, old, and vintage, shout out to our friends from the Victors. All right, we'll be back next week with the Victors Weekly.